Hello. Okay, so this will be my first review of an Underground episode. And this episode is episode 9, first season, Black and Blue. And I absolutely love this episode. I think it was such a fun episode to watch. It was so full of everything that I like about this TV show. So much. You could see the research, you could see just all of the time that was put into creating this episode and its script. There were lots of references, lots of deep shit going on in this episode. Uh, there was it was full of so many metaphors, so many. Uh, sorry, I just watched it. So many metaphors. I have so many notes. But yeah, full of foreshadowing, metaphors. It was very poetic, especially because there was so much more that was being hinted at uh, versus what was happening on the actual surface watching a film. Sorry, that's my phone. Um, and we're going to get into that because I took lots of notes and I can't wait to explain some of those things that I saw, some of the connections I made and what the episode meant to me, and I'm going to break that down. I'm not going to go like just for scene to scene to scene because I know I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent. Okay, so let me just get into it. I'm just going to go with what speaks to me. So first off, we're going to start off with the title, Black and Blue. I love the title because I think this episode really dealt with two things, which the title means to me. When you think of it just black and blue, what does it mean to be black and blue? Usually it just refers to being bruised. And what do bruises do? They remind us of hurt. They remind us of a place we've either been hurt, or when you beat someone black and blue, you get the reminders of a very bad time. also as well, I think black and blue is a really interesting play on words because I think that this episode centered a lot around the demons that Rosalie has the most. And I feel like that title defines or is a really great metaphor for how she feels in the world, which is to be black, grappling with dealing with being black and having a white daddy, and therefore it giving her the blues or just lots of issues, especially being his slave. So we're gonna get into that. Basically, we're going to start off. The very first scene is that Rosalie has been captured. She is in the barn. The guys are telling her to take off the white woman's clothing that she has on. She takes it off, and she chucks it into the fire. Now, one very important thing that was said that actually is the foreshadowing for what the episode's going to be about in terms of Rosalie, and that is um, um, slave catcher dude. I'm sorry, I can never remember his name, so he's always gonna be slave catcher dude. So you know exactly what I'm talking about with the son Ben. I remember Ben because I like Ben. Slave catcher dude says to the guys to stop them from, I guess, playing around with her too much because they probably had some bad ideas in their head when she was taking off that dress. He says, "Excuse me, please stop. That is another man's property, and I plan on bringing her back in one piece and intact." And you can see Rosalie is like, "Oh, really, bitch?" when he says that. Yeah, he saved her, but it's such a double whammy because at the same time, even though she's been rescued, the statement and the reason for being rescued, I'm sure, pretty hits a sore spot for her, being called someone's property. Um, so um, the other thing is that in the dress that is burning on the fire, which they focus on because they want you to notice that, she has put a plant called Devil's Snare in that dress, and that was what she was picking when she was on the trail when he first encountered her, the slave catcher dude. And this plant is called Datura. It's a Datura plant, and it is known for its medicinal properties. It was used back in the day to aid women in child labor. It was used to ease injury. But then it also has a bad side where it can create hallucination. It can make you hallucinate if you take too much, and or it can kill you. um, and this actually is a drug I had heard about before because actually Harry Potter, the movie, uses it, and it's for a spell or whatever, and kids because it's a weed that grows everywhere in the world. in England, I guess, started smoking these Datura fucking cigarettes, and they would hallucinate and do crazy shit. And it's apparently a really bad trick. And it's called Devil's Snare because it doesn't make you feel good. It brings out all your inner demons, and you don't have a good time. Your mind actually plays tricks on you and scares the living shit out of you. You're living in a nightmare. Okay, so with that, that's what Rosalie did. She knew this shit was in there. Oh my goodness. Why am I getting calls? So, when she's getting tied up by slave catcher dude, he refers to the fact that she's, worth $5,000, and that's more than all the other slaves combined. And she did not like hearing that because she does go on in the future to say she's worth more than $5,000. She's a human being. There should be no price tag on her life and who she is. But slave catcher dude said something very interesting to her. He says, and I wrote this down, money speaks plenty clear sometimes. That is the only way they know how to talk, when she refers to the fact that, like, oh, you think that he's my father? And he's like, come on, it's pretty clear. And she's like, well, how do you know that? And that's what he said to her. And that means two things. He's seen this before. He's had to probably he's had to kidnap people's slave masters' kin before, because they had a special attachment to them. And those people probably tried to, and, a lot of slaves that have been in Rosalie's position have run away before. This is not a new thing for him. When he leaves and she starts talking to Ben, who is keeping watch on her, she did ask what his name is, and he says, I'm Rosalie, I'm Ben. She goes, I know, because I saw the slave bill, and that's where she proceeds to talk about things that she likes, and then proceeds to say, I am not $5,000, and I am more than just a name on a slave bill, meaning that I am a person, and I wish the world could see that. Then something really interesting happens. Creepy southerner, other slave catcher dude, who has that really smooth accent, which is just bothers me. It's just so creepy. Gives Ben a book to read and tells him it's about a man obsessed with a hunt, like his father. And we will find out in future scenes that he has put the letter that is letting his dad know that they are actually rich. He has planted it in the Moby Dick book, which is two things. He knew exactly what the fuck he was doing. He knew that Ben could read, and he wanted Ben to read that because he wanted to start trouble, because he wants I don't know exactly why he is, but I know it was premeditated. And yeah. And we'll get into Moby Dick, because let's even just get into it. Moby Dick was one of the deep meanings in the fucking this episode. It was very, very deep. Moby Dick is I have my glass of water. I like sea life and mermaids, so I have a lot of things like this all over the place. If you ever visited my apartment or knew me as a person, you would know that I like aquatic shit like a mofo. Look at my place now. Okay, anyway. So Moby Dick is about a hunter who is literally obsessed with the hunt of catching this white whale. And it is famous for it's literature, and it's one of those things you read in college, and they want to tell you how great it is. It's one of those classics, and it's famous for actually its very first line, which is very, very juicy, and that is, "Call me Ishmael." And then the narrator, the character in the book, you see everything from his perspective because he's telling the story. That is he proceeds to go into his life and talks about it. And then he's going to describe his obsession with this hunt on trying to capture this whale. It's actually for revenge, because this whale had fucked up some shit before when he was on the open seas, and now he is determined to capture this whale again. And this is foreshadowing for future episodes that have to do with slave catcher dude. But the main character, let's get back to really the first sentence I just said. It's famous for the line, "I am called Ishmael." Remember that now the herbs are burning on the fire. So Rosalie is tied up, and she is starting to get delirious from smelling the drug. And Ben is proceeding to open this book up because she asked him, "Are you going to read it?" And he starts reading it. And the first line he says is, "I am Ishmael." And Call me Ishmael, not I am Ishmael. This is a biblical reference, and this is what this, um, which is why it was a very interesting sentence to people when they read it. Ishmael, in a character in the Bible. Sorry, I'm not really religious, but I was raised in a church. He is a fatherless man who has lost his dad's interest to his other half brother who has everything. And that is from a story in the Bible. And that's very, very interesting. And I would think that Rosalie has gone to church every Sunday, and this is starting to trigger some things. And she's hallucinating. This line, Ben reading this book has now triggered from the words he is saying in Rosalie's mind, these demons that she is grappling with at this very moment, which is why she's going to have the crazy trip that she has. And we will go on to explain. For instance, with the I am Ishmael, and then he also says the father issues of that line start to trigger Rosalie, and she starts to hallucinate a little bit. And there were certain lines that Ben was reading that you could clearly hear he was saying as she starts to get more and more woozy throughout the scene. And that is, how can a prisoner reach outside? To me, the white whale is that wall, and things like that. And also at the very end, before he cuts off her ropes, he does say, well, anyway, I don't care. You get the point. So moving on, Ben proceeds to let her loose after he gets the letter that falls out of the Moby Dick book when he closes it, and then gets angry that his dad has lied to him and lets Rosalie go and gives her a knife. Rosalie then begins to be on the run, and she's just trying to make her way through the pig slaughterhouse, which is another fucking metaphor because it reminded me of Animal House because of the money being thrown outside and what it made all the slave catchers just do. They were very distracted because of their greed for money. And we can't get into everything because this is why I love this TV show. You could just talk about so many different things. But we're going to stick to this. So we're going to go up with Rosalie's hallucination, and I'm going to break that down, and then I'm going to get into Slave Catcher Dude's hallucination, and we're going to break that down. And then we're going to be out of the barn. So Rosalie she finds a room, she enters it, and all of a sudden she is in her dad's, or her master's, office. And she's, now she's like full into it. And she confronts him. And she first starts to do what she used to do, just, act like a slave and not look at her dad. And then all of a sudden she says, no, I'm not going to do this. And it's because she knows that she is also hallucinating because of the herbs that are burning on the fire. And another guy pops up. She has a little argument with him, and he calls her an ungrateful house bitch because she should feel safe at home. And this triggers in Rosalie that I never felt safe. This was never a safe place. And then she proceeds to tell her father off for that. And then all of a sudden, the guy who raped, she says, you let him do this to me, and you just sat there and read your newspaper, and you didn't do anything. And then the overseer dude who tried to rape her comes in and says, every time you look at these bruises, you will be reminded of me. And this is exactly why she is also going through this, because that's true. She's black and blue from this experience, but she's also black and blue from the way her father has always treated her, like she didn't exist. And basically, she starts grappling with drunk dude while her dad watches and does nothing, which is a big metaphor for how she's always felt. And then it also triggers how wise Rosalie probably did what she did when she was almost raped, because it was her only choice, because she knew if she let it happen, she would just have to live with it. And she also knew when she killed that dude that she would be in big trouble, because her dad's first inclination would not have been to protect her. It would have been to protect that white dude. And she would have been in a lot of trouble. But then her dad proceeds to yell at her, and he says some really interesting things. He says, you are my daughter, and there was no freedom for you. And don't look at me like that. You forgot who you are. And then he says, I own you. You were not made for running. You need to be here with me. I own you. And this brings up a lot of really huge, that's when she stabs him when he yells at her. Why? Because it's a very confusing relationship. to be owned by your father, who doesn't even like seem to look at you like a person, but yet still in his really fucked up sadistic way cares about your presence, because that's the only way that he can express it, through this brutality of owning you. And I guess, you know, if anybody wants to comment on this, like, I would love to talk about it more, but I'm just going to leave it at that. And that is what Rosalie is grappling with, black and blue. She's a black woman who has a white father who treats her like a piece of property, and like she has no emotions or any right to feel anything. And yet she's supposed to be grateful for this bullshit because she's a house slave. And he's done so much for her and spared her from the fields. And but really, she just thinks that, no, that's what my mom fucking did for me. And you have never done shit for me. And I'm going to leave it there. Now we go to Slave Catcher Dude's hallucination. He all of a sudden realizes that it's Devil's Snare when he sees Ernestine cutting a pig, which is when he did last see her, when he interrogated her on the plantation before taking the job. And he knows that Ernestine is Rosalie's wife. And since Rosalie is actually triggering, which is his demon, because it triggers a lot, because he knows he's rich and he's still going to return her to her father when he could let her go. And this triggers his own issues with himself. And then also goes back to being obsessed with the hunt. He is Moby. He is the character. Call Me Ishmael in Moby Dick as well. Him and Rosalie are both battling their demons, and this line, "Call Me Ishmael," is supposed to actually be a metaphor for them both, taken in different ways. Call Me Ishmael for the slave catcher dude is the fact that he is obsessed with the hunt, and Ernestine basically calls him out on the fact of how she says to him, she talks about how she's passed down to Rosalie her smarts and her ability to think on her toes. And she says, yep, she thinks on her toes, and that's why she's poisoned the air, and now she's, it was in the plan. She's really, really tricky. I taught her that. What have you taught your son then? Basically meaning I've taught my daughter how to survive and how to think on her. I've given her tools to make the way in the world the best that she can. And what have you done for Ben? And he is going to children mimic their parents' behavior. Your child is going to grow up to mimic yours. And she actually goes into this tangent about blood. And she says, blood stains things. It gets everywhere. It's so hard to get out. But but a little bit of lemon water does the trick. I taught Rosalie that. What have you taught Ben? Meaning that she has taught her daughter how to remedy things. And blood, the double metaphor for blood staining things. She's putting pig's blood all over his fucking lips and all over his body. She's in a slaughterhouse. It's like, once again, animal reference. But the metaphor for me was that, like, in this world where they live, it is a terrible world, and she had to bring her children into this terrible world where blood does actually stain a lot. And she has taught her daughter the best she can how to maybe remove some of that blood out of the metaphor of her life. I don't fucking know. Something along those lines. It's deep. It's like poetry. But yes, lemon water is a metaphor to me for how Rosalie has been taught to cope with this world that's full of bloodshed. And how is Ben going to learn how to deal with the bloodshed? So she proceeds to talk about the wolf, which is really interesting because we all know that this has been a theme. Ben has asked his mother, who is the good or bad, is dad the good or bad wolf? And even in previous episodes, when he's talking to the slave that his dad owned, who helped raise him, his slave dude told him about the story between the good and the bad wolf. So it was really interesting that Ernestine is bringing up animals and being a wolf. And she basically tells him that when Slave Catcher Dude responds to Ernestine after her rant or her speech or her monologue, whatever you want to call it, he says, Ben is fine. And she says, no, he's not. Sometimes the wolf does not know he is a wolf. And she talks about, like, the wolf is hungry, and only thing that will feed it is flesh and blood. Talking about, once again, blood is like a really big, huge, it was used a lot in this episode with the pig's blood that Noah had to get through to come out, and there's blood dripping from the pigs, and then now Ernestine speaking about blood, and She basically says to him, which is foreshadowing for a lot if you ask me. First of all, remember, what did slave that raised Ben say to him? There's a good wolf and there's a bad wolf. And which both of them are at battle, and only one can survive. And the only way to know which one will survive is which one you feed the most. Do you feed the bad wolf or do you feed the good wolf? And Ernestine basically tells him, you are the bad wolf because you need to feed it flesh and blood. Meaning what you do, you kind of enjoy it. And you maybe need to admit that you are a bad person and you may like it. And I think that this is foreshadowing for the future because rewind back, Rosalie has now stabbed Ben because she was hallucinating and thought it was her father. And in trying to stab her demon, she ended up stabbing Ben. She came to. I was so sad when I found out it was Ben. I like Ben. He's like one of the only white people I like on this series. And he, when he screams, that is when, after Slave Catcher Dude is fighting with Noah, when Noah shook him out of his hallucination, he hears his son, and then he proceeds to run towards his son and finds his son is now on the ground and has been stabbed. And from the way that it looked when he kissed him, it looked like Ben was fading, and he just said goodbye to his son. This is where Moby Dick comes into play, because now I believe that Slave Catcher Dude is going to be angry, and he is going to want to seek revenge, like the character in Moby Dick. The character in Moby Dick wants to hunt this whale for revenge on a past issue where he encountered the same exact whale at sea. And this is going to mean that I think that he is going to hunt Rosalie and Noah and want their blood because he has lost his son. And we're going to watch him get a little bit more evil. I mean, they got booked for a second season, so they have to make more intense characters. And I think that they had to make a choice if they wanted him to be saved from his son or if they wanted him to develop to show how a man could develop into an evil character, to see the development of someone choose evil versus good. And maybe this character is going to choose the evil route based off of all the things that have happened to him. I don't know. It's so deep, y'all. Anyway, let's just move on a little bit, and then we're going to go. So now Rosalie and Noah are on the run. And now we have all this other shit, which is basically to do, oh my god, this video is 22 minutes and 36 seconds. I am so sorry, y'all. I hope you're getting your life from this video and I'm not boring the shit out of you, but I really, really love this stuff. So basically we're just going to go straight to Elizabeth and Boo. Her first scene opens up with her reading Cinderella to Boo, come on, you already know why they chose the story Cinderella, because it makes sense. And her husband comes home. We know that he has been in the South trying to rescue the slave that was the slave that was helping them with the Underground Railroad, and they need to get him back. And he tried to make an attempt to get him back, and he basically went to a auction that was for valuable slaves who can do things that other slaves cannot. And that's a whole nother thing based on so much there as well to talk about. But basically, to make it short, he buys a slave for $700 who has never been touched by any man and is a beautiful, quadrant look-like woman. So, and then he tries to wager it against Mr. Abbott or whatever the fuck his name is. And they play a game of darts. He basically gets him to make a bet on, if you win, you get my slave. If I win, I get yours. And the guy catches on and tries to stab him in his hand. And they end up getting in a huge fight, and he almost kills a man, but he is stopped. Back to Elizabeth, she has had an issue happen as well. Her ex-lover / sheriff dude has shown up and wants more, and looks like he was about to rape her, so bitch had no choice but to clock her over his head. And this is twice that in this series that it's been brought up of what is a woman to do when a man says no, because it just feel entitled to your fucking body. And usually in those situations, you just gotta knock a nigga outside your head. Oh, I can't believe I just said that. I shouldn't say that word. But sometimes you have to, okay? Sometimes you gotta knock a motherfucker upside their head because that's your only choice. Or get raped. So, I don't really blame Elizabeth. And then she tells her husband, and he is really upset about it. He finds the sheriff in the basement. He wants to kill the sheriff. He wants to slap the shit out of her. They're arguing about this because he is basically slut-shaming her. And then she goes into, well, you put me in this situation. What the fuck did you expect me to do? I'm out here alone. I'm trying to protect this child. Then he proceeds to say to her, did you do it for us or did you do it for her? Which is interesting. And then they start to argue, and he does say a very good line which is something to think about. He, talks about how he almost killed a man down south trying to get Clyde back, and he feels like what does he say? He says, I am a man of the law that feels completely lawless, meaning that he almost killed somebody because of his emotions, and he almost did things the wrong way because he's just so full of anger at the way that things are. And then Rosalie and Noah arrive, and they are reunited with Boo, and it's a really beautiful scene. Interrupting the argument, Boo just tried to almost shoot Elizabeth's husband because she thought that he was going to do something to her, and she's already traumatized from having lost so many people already in a little short span of time that really she sees as protectors. And I wonder how Boo's character is going to develop because she's just seen so much. But the way that the episode ended, it kind of panned in on Elizabeth looking at Rosalie and Boo reuniting. And we already know she has mommy issues because she wants to be one. She's connected with Boo. And I saw a little bit of jealousy. And I wonder if they're going to deal with that, and if that's going to be another plot line, like Elizabeth dealing with the jealousy of Boo and Rosalie's relationship, or is she not going to be able to give Boo up when it's time? Has she attached to her? And now she just feels like that's her daughter. I don't know. But that was basically the episode. 26 minutes and 48 seconds in right now. Please tell me what you think, or if you had any thoughts, or if you thought this review was good, anything, if there's something I could do better, was it too long? I'll try and make them shorter in the future, but these episodes always just give you so much to talk about. But basically, I believe that next season, the foreshadowing, or maybe for the finale, because I still think that we have not touched on what's going on the Macon farm right now, and I think that it's foreshadowing for revenge. I think the theme of this episode was about the different characters dealing with their demons. I know I did not touch on Kato, but, if you want to really quick, my only notes was that, Kato talks about the fact we've been wondering what the fuck has been eating up Kato. And Kato basically admits that he has a wife and he has a daughter to Noah when Noah touched the sensitive spot, telling him off, and says that bonnet that I've been constantly folding and everything is a reminder of my wife and daughter who have a smile that would stop your heart. That was a beautiful thing that when he said that, I felt for him. But then he also says, but you got it wrong about why I carry that bonnet. It's because it is a reminder that the heart is only needed for pumping blood, and that's its only sole purpose, and it stops for no one because he has been damaged from the loss of not being able to do nothing when his wife and daughter were sold. And he also, I think this is also why Kato smiled at Noah when he got shot in the leg when they were on the run, because the look that they gave was, he was basically saying to Noah, that's you again, using your heart too much. You need to learn to be black and blue like me. And that means you need to start thinking about yourself and stop thinking about others, or you're going to get yourself killed. And Noah knew that, and that's why he made the decision to throw him the knife and run away. I think Kato's going to survive this somehow because he's tricky as shit. So I just don't see him going out like that. And he's a very well-developed character, and he's entertaining even if we don't like him sometimes. And he's very complex. And if they didn't show him dying, then that means they're going to bring it up somehow. So rest in peace, Ben. He was a good character. And that is my review, my first review. What do you all think? I hope you liked it. Have a great rest of your day. And I will definitely be reviewing the finale. I can't wait for it. I can't wait to find out what's happened. That's what I was talking about before. I can't wait to find out what happens on the plantation. I know what's been going on because they just completely admitted it this episode. But like I said, foreshadowing to me because of the Moby Dick story and because of A lot of the demons that were brought up in this episode, I think the foreshadowing was revenge, and I think that revenge is going to be a huge theme of the finale, because all these emotions are running high, and everybody's just like, got a lot of shit going on. You know, the abolitionist couple, the dude wants to get revenge on his wife by slapping the shit out of her, and he wants to kill the dude for even think he could touch her, and making a cuckold out of him. And then you have, uh, you know, uh, you have Rosalie, who probably wants revenge on her father for how he has treated her, and she hates him. And then you also have Ernestine, who is going to want revenge on him because she knows that one of her babies is dead, and now she's been put in that sweatbox, and Master Tom has betrayed her. So there's going to be a lot of, I think, like revenge in the finale. Tell me your thoughts, folks. Let me know. Talk to you later. I gotta get off of this screen. Bye.